Hello, I'm Robert, a volunteer fact checker and helping you feel scared of many things. And I thought I'd show you this article. I go through this CNN article, and this is one that I would count as 0 out of 10, or even more, 0 out of 14, because of all the things it doesn't tell you that it should tell you, to help you understand why there's nothing here to be scared of whatsoever. Now, first of all, I can understand why people would click on this article, Trump cancelling elections. Then going to be obviously feel scared if you think that Trump can cancel the midterms or indeed the 2028 election. But I would never even click on such an article because it shows profound ignorance of the US Constitution. So the midterms, the terms of the current Houses of Representatives, all of their terms end on 6th of January 2027. And then a third of the senators, their terms end on the same date. So it's not possible to cancel that because that's in the US Constitution, and there's no way to extend that date. They're out of office, and if you didn't have elections, there would be no Congress anymore, and that just can't be permitted to happen. So you've got to find a way to elect some new people. And so the US Constitution says that you have to have elections before the end of their terms. Now, the date can be changed. So the date of the election is set by Congress. So Congress can pass laws to change the date of the election, but it can't pass a law to change the date of the terms end. That's in the Constitution. And any change to the US Constitution can be blocked by a simple majority vote in a single chamber in each of 13 states. So it's extraordinarily difficult to change that. And it's certainly not going to happen. And the president has no role in this whatsoever. He can't even change the date of the election. So Trump cancelling elections, that's a bit like saying a cow jumped over the moon. If you saw a big headline saying a cow jumped over the moon, would you click on it? Of course not. So I wouldn't click on a story saying Trump cancelling elections, because it's obviously absurd. Combined with my background knowledge of how the law works and the courts. So for instance, people say, well, Trump can cancel elections. You've probably heard the news that the Supreme Court has stopped all his tariffs under the IEEFA rules. If he can cancel elections, why can't he just impose tariffs anyway and ignore the Supreme Court? Why did he have to pay any attention when the Supreme Court blocked his attempt to ignore birthright citizenship? If he can't ignore birthright citizenship, how is he going to ignore the US Constitution, what it says about election? I mean, just so obviously he can't do it. And he's stopped numerous times. And an example, back when he tried to exile those, just move illegal immigrants to El Salvador prison without any due process. And it was quite scandalous that he was able to send 2 flights, I think it was, or however many it was, after the judge had told him to stop. But then after that, he couldn't send any more. So he is subject to law just like everyone else. And the idea that he's somehow immune from the immunity decision, again, is very much misunderstood. So that's a subject for a different video. But that is why I wouldn't even click on this. Obviously, anyone who's written a piece like this is just not worth reading. It's going to be full of nonsense. So now I said Democrats increasingly sound alarm bells. I know that Gavin Newsom has hinted at this, but he's got political reasons for doing that, proclaiming that Trump can cancel the elections. He surely knows perfectly well he can't really, but he gets a lot of political hay about claiming he can. So now let's go and look at the article itself. So it starts off by saying when President Donald Trump sat down with President Volodymyr Zelensky, at one point he said, so you say during the war you can't have elections. So let me just say 3.5 years from now, so you mean if we happen to be at war with somebody, no more elections. Oh, that's good. So now this article does not explain what's wrong with that. Nowhere in the entire article, and then laughter ensues and Trump wonders aloud what the fake news would do with his comment. But the CNN has to bear in mind, kids are going to read this, adults who are not very well trained in the US Constitution are going to read this. People who just don't know much about politics at all, people not even very interested in politics. And they will just believe this because the CNN just ran, this is what Trump said, and it didn't explain what's wrong with it. The reason is because the US Constitution applies to the United States. The Ukraine Constitution applies to Ukraine. It's just like saying, you mean I can't drive on the left in the United States because we drive on the left in the United Kingdom? You can't. You can't drive on the left on the roads in the United States because that is a UK law. In the same way, Trump can't change the elections because they happen regularly like clockwork. They're set in the US Constitution, nobody can change it. But the US Constitution does not apply to Ukraine. Ukraine uses the Ukraine Constitution and the Ukraine law. In the Ukraine Constitution, Zelensky had to declare martial law because he was being attacked. It was a very clear case. He couldn't have said, well look, we've got bombs falling on our cities, but this isn't a martial law situation. So he had to declare martial law. And then but when it's under martial law, if you go and look at the Ukrainian constitution, it has a clause that says during martial law, elections can't be held. So it's written down in paper in the constitution, just like the US constitution has this line saying that the term ends on the 6th of January for the midterms and on the 20th of January for the president. And that's when he leaves at noon, 20th of January 2029. Trump leaves the White House. He is no longer the oath of office of the police and the military. At midday, it switches to the next president automatically. So he's no longer able to command them. Theoretically, if you had, during Inauguration Day, if Trump had ordered them to go north, to a brigade of soldiers to start marching north, and then the next president wanted them to go south, then they would have to keep walking north until midday. Then they would have to start walking south because the new president has told them to walk in a different direction. So that's how it works. So he's out of office because he's no longer president. But you don't have that situation in Ukraine. In Ukraine, Zelensky is not permitted to call a new election. It actually says they can hold elections early, unlike in the United States. They've got a maximum length of 5 years. But if there's martial law, then they're not permitted to have elections, so his term is extended automatically. So it's just because it's got a different constitution. And the UK constitution is different again. During World War II, then when Churchill took over the unity government, then he was not elected. And he couldn't be elected because it was the middle of the Blitz. And we in the United Kingdom, then the Parliament can extend the length. The term length was set by Parliament in the United Kingdom. So that's a different system again. And they just extended it by 1 year every year of the war until the war ended. So Churchill was unelected, and just for practical reasons and because legally we could do it. Now, so for instance, if the United States was in a situation where it absolutely had, for some reason, it just couldn't do elections at all, then it would have to change its constitution. Then it could do it. So, in the case of Ukraine, it can't even change its constitution during a wartime, because to change its constitution, it has to have a referendum, and it can't do a referendum during martial law. So Ukraine is in this kind of catch-22 situation. It can't have a referendum to change its constitution until the martial law ends, and it needs to change its constitution in order to have a referendum during martial law. So that is, you could say, it's maybe not very well written constitution or something, but that is the situation for the Ukrainian constitution. So every country has its own different constitution, and this article doesn't explain that at all. So can you see how it's a garbage article? And I've only hardly got anywhere into it yet. I'll go more quickly through the remaining points, or this will be a very long video. But and then Growing Number are arguing Trump will do something to either cancel or commandeer elections. All this, so then he was saying, or it does mention briefly which the Constitution forbids anyway. It does mention that briefly, which the Constitution forbids anyway. But he's certainly floated it, and he's taken and his extraordinary moves over erasing Arm Bell. It's very easy to miss that. Yes, it does actually mention that the Constitution forbids a third term. Then the Illinois governor claimed that his strategy to send troops into cities that he's going to use troops to take control of the elections. He'll just claim there's some problem with an election, and he's got troops on the ground that can take control of it, if in fact he's allowed to do this. And so the way that CNN is getting around this, I expect this entirely deliberate. That they want to have an eye-catching article, so they just say, if in fact he's not allowed to do it, and they don't fact-check this. If you fact-check that, in fact he's not allowed to do that. He is not permitted to, if there's a problem with an election, then the local police can respond. And in many states, even the police can only respond if the election officials in the polling place say, look, come and help us, we've got a drunk voter and he's causing all sorts of problems. Then the police can come, but only because they were invited by election officials who needed their help. Federal officers are not permitted anywhere near. It's set out in the law. And same also for ICE and DHS. They're not permitted to go anywhere near a polling station or anyone with arms, unless there's an actual invasion of the United States. And the invasion is threatening the polling. Then, apart from that situation, then you can't actually go send them anywhere near the polling station. And the penalty for that is 5 years in prison. So, a maximum penalty if you do something like that. So this is nothing. CNN just didn't explain that. No explanation whatsoever. No mention. And then he points out that Adolf Hitler took just 53 days to turn Germany into a dictatorship. Again, they don't fact-check this. They don't explain that Germany, up to 1933, under the Weimar Constitution, has yet another different constitution from the United States Constitution. The United States has never had a constitution that where any president could have done anything like what Hitler did, exploiting a loophole in that very weak constitution that they had back then. And Germany, no country has a constitution where someone can do that. The none of the democracies, not of the well-established democracies. You've got Kim Jong-un in North Korea, and you've got the Russian constitution, which is so very weak that he could basically change it on a whim. But the other places like Germany and United Kingdom, United States, you can't do these things. So you have to have a very weak constitution before you can do that. And people often talk about Hungary. So Hungary, then once they've got a 2/3 majority in Parliament, then they can rewrite the constitution. And some of the changes that Viktor Orban did, they moved from just a suggestion to being an actual change in the constitution in just a couple of weeks. Because that's for two reasons. That the Hungary constitution, first of all, there was this law that gave any party that had the maximum number of votes gets a kind of boost to make it easier to reduce the risk of all the lots of small parties that can't agree with each other. And this put Viktor Orban in a situation where he got 2/3 majority, and then the Hungarian constitution says if you've got a 2/3 majority, you can change the Hungarian constitution. Then Hungary then used that to greatly weaken the judiciary and change the constitution, which made the judiciary much weaker, which then moved lots of the checks and balances. You can't do any of that in the United States because it's got a different constitution. The United States Constitution is very robust. So they don't explain any of that. And then Newsom, they have this thing about Newsom saying that it says asked for his own plans for running for president in 2028, and Newsom shrugged them off by casting doubt on whether that election would be above board or even happen at all. This is missing all the context for that. So in that interview that Newsom gave, then he was asked, then Newsom's point was he was saying that the Democrats have to win the midterms, because he claimed if the Democrats didn't win the midterms, then the Republicans would be able to totally dismantle things to the extent that they could stay in office indefinitely. Now that does not pass the fact check at all. That's just politicians making stuff up. The Democrat politicians can make stuff up just like Trump does. And in reality, there's no way that the Republicans, I mean, you look at how disordered the Republicans are already in Congress. Trump has lost a lot of his grip on the House already. And the idea that if the Republicans manage to keep hold of the House in midterms, that somehow they'll be able to end democracy. They can't change the US Constitution. They can't change the Supreme Court decisions. Trump has not been able to overturn a single local election result or special election result. They've all been shifted massively in the direction of Democrats. New York elected Mandami. There's been one election after another where states have elected Democrats when Trump was trying to get the Republican elected. And yet people claim somehow that he's this all-powerful person who can make himself into a dictator. He can't even, do things like that. And he can't keep the tariffs going when the Supreme Court decided that he's not permitted to do the IEEPA tariffs. Then he can do another kind of tariffs, but he can't do those anymore. They just stopped. There's not the most basic fact checking. It just fails it completely. So Newsom was talking as a politician there. There's no way that Newsom really believes that Trump could stay in office in 2029. I can't believe that. So, but it's a nice narrative to use to say, look, we've got to win the midterms because come and vote Democrat, because we've got to stop Trump from staying in power after the end of his term. So you can see why he'd say that. But it's not true. It's just politics. And you get an awful lot of that. Just nonsense. There's the people likely to believe it, then politicians may well say it. So now then look at this. And then what Trump fantasized about dragging America into war as a pretense to cancel our elections. So this is another thing that many of the people I help in the United States, for some reason believe that Trump could cancel elections if the United States was at war. Well, the United States went all the way through World War II, and it was taking part in World War II. What happened to the elections? They just continued as clockwork all the way through. So I mean, that fails the most basic fact check. And Trump can't declare war, it's only Congress can. So this idea that Trump could somehow cancel elections by starting a war, it's historically false. And then if you look at the Constitution, they can't do it. There's the Benton Center, summarized it and said there's no capability for anyone to suspend the US Constitution. So you might think about the President Yoon of South Korea. He suspended the South Korean Constitution. That's because he's in South Korea. The South Korean Constitution is not the same as the US Constitution. It's the same thing. Laws of one country do not apply in another one, just like the driving on the left in United Kingdom does not mean that you can drive on the left in the United States. So that's another bit of garbage there. And that might justify his ability to determine that there's an election and cancel the 2026 elections, emergency, and cancel the 2026 elections. So again, the CNN is not lying there. It's just presenting people's quotes. But what CNN is doing that is extremely misleading is it's not fact-checking these things. And for a naive reader, you read this and you think, okay, so if he can say there's an emergency, he can cancel the elections when he can't. Doesn't matter what emergency there is. There's no emergency that can lead to the US Constitution being suspended or to elections being cancelled. And then talking about so-and-so told CNN's early start that Trump's use of troops in cities is an attempt to create a pretext. He wants a crisis because he wants an excuse to cancel elections down the road. And I mean, this is a thing that they say because it's very much like for instance, in that you have horses that are riding on a seashore, and you hear them going clip clop on movies because people expect to hear that, although it doesn't happen in real life because that only happens on hard roads. In the same way, if people keep repeating over and over and over that Trump can cancel the elections, and other politicians take up on that, and others take up on that, it becomes something that anyone can say, and they can use it for political reasons, when it's not. There's no truth to it whatsoever. But it becomes a kind of thing that people expect politicians to say. So that's all they've got here. They've got all of the politicians that are making this false claim for political reasons. And I said, America needs to wake up. This is serious. We have elected officials saying nothing and doing nothing. So the reason they're doing all that is they're just saying, vote Democrat, vote Democrat, vote Democrat, because Trump is going to cancel the elections. So this is just a voting ploy. That's all they're doing there. And then they say, certainly lacks and now this is very misleading, Trump certainly lacks the legal power to cancel elections under federal law. This makes it seem that the election date is set in law. It's set in the Constitution. US Congress can't can't cancel elections. Nobody can, and the Supreme Court can't cancel elections either. There's nobody in the entire United States, none of the state legislatures can cancel them. The Congress can't cancel them, the President can't cancel them, and the judiciary can't cancel them. the only way they could be changed is by getting all 48 states to approve in both chambers, or in one chamber of the unicameral, the exact same amendment to the US Constitution in all those states. And that's not going to happen. And then it goes on to say, all these things, when he's shown a real disregard for democratic norms and election law, not only sought to overturn the 2020 election based on lies, he did try, but the Supreme Court dismissed all those cases. It wouldn't even hear them. So, all these things, he says these things, but he can't actually do them. And it doesn't matter what Trump says. So they're saying that Trump repeatedly declined to directly rebut these critics. It's not up to Trump. It's up to the US Constitution. And he sought to boost, and then recently began to push to end mail voting and voting machines. And then he doesn't appear to have the power to do any of that. And this weasel words, he doesn't appear to have the power. They should have said he does not have the power to do any of that. They shouldn't say he doesn't appear. That's very misleading. He simply does not have the power. You wouldn't just ask anyone who knows anything about that, and he doesn't have the power to do that. But then another thing they don't explain is that if he ended mail voting, this would make no difference whatsoever, or virtually no difference, maybe a very, very close race, to the balance between Democrats and Republicans. You're talking about a fraction of a percent if there is a difference, if they vote by mail or if they vote in person. You get more people voting by mail, but you get more of both sides voting. So, again, another thing they just don't mention. So Trump is making a big thing about ending mail-in voting, as if that would, and he claimed falsely that this would mean the Republicans would stay in power for 50 years. But it would make virtually no difference to anything. So these are all things they're just not saying. And then it ends with a Public Research Institute poll showed that 49% of Americans said there was a real danger of Trump using the presidency to become a dictator. Well, it's no wonder, because of articles like this. The CNN itself, amongst with the other mainstream media, has created the conditions where many Americans believe that Trump could use his presidency to become a dictator. It's precisely because of articles like this that you get polls like that. So it's a circular thing. They get more and more articles like this. They get these polls, they can then use these polls to attach to these articles which are completely false and mistaken. And then it ends with Democrats increasingly calling on people to start paying attention. Well, CNN is left-leaning, so the thing you're getting all the way through this article is vote Democrat, vote Democrat, vote Democrat. That's a subtext, not explicitly said. But it's saying, look, the Republicans are dangerous and Trump is especially dangerous, so think about how you're voting, and you just pause and think it over. Think over all the things we said. We're not telling you how to vote, but it's very obvious that you should vote Democrat. You know, that's the basic kind of thing behind this article. I'm not saying this because I'm not saying this for partisan reason. You get the same things. People are doing the same thing with vote Republican. So I'm not saying it's just natural for a left-leaning one to do articles like this, but bear in account that that's the motivation behind this article. And it's full of very misleading stuff. So I hope you can see this is utter garbage article, and I would rank it. I counted 14 different things. I haven't tried to enumerate them here. There's at least 14 things that it doesn't tell you that would completely flip the impression it's trying to give at each stage during that article. So this is an outrageously bad article in terms of fact-checking. I'm not talking about in terms of politics, not talking in terms of ethics, but in terms of being factual. This is zero. Like if I was marking it, if I was grading it, I would give this a grade of 0 out of 14 because of the complete lack of any facts in it that are accurate. Just a whole lot of quotes that are presented as if they're true when they're not, and no fact-checking of any of it. So, anyway, I hope that helps you, and hope you'd be less scared about things like this and these utter nonsensical garbage articles that you get sometimes. If you approach it with the eye of a fact-checker, and I hope this can help you to get an idea of what it is to read an article like this from the point of view of someone who is used to fact-checking. And if you are scared, you just look at the top and you say, Trump cancel elections. You're panicking all the way through. You believe all these things that they say. Your mind gets completely obscured. You're not thinking clearly at all. And by the end, you believe that Trump's going to be a dictator. If you approach it as a fact checker, you ask, well, Trump cancel elections? I mean, I know that Trump can't do that. And then I would only then go beyond that first title, because someone's asked me to look it over for them, because I know I'm not going to read anything sensible in an article that starts like that. So anyway, hope this helps you, and I'll put a link to this article in the video description. But you can have a look, like, if you like. I think I've also got a whole series of slides I could do for you, but I've got it crossed out. I might do a blog post about this and put all those slides, sort of my grading, as it were, grading paper for it. Grade 0 out of 14. I might do a little short debunk where I just show my grades for the article and attach this video to it. And so I've graded 0 out of 14. And this is not meant to be in any way antagonistic to CNN. It just, you get the same, obviously you get the same in Fox News the other way around. It's notorious for this sort of thing. And you get the same in New York Times, you get the same in even the most neutral, even things like Associated Press. Not for political reasons, but so much, and some people say that's left-leaning, but others would say it's very central. And but it has clickbait headlines, it has things, but it doesn't do proper fact-checking sometimes. It's better than most, far better than most. But you do get articles that you have to approach with a very, very skeptical, you have to be very grounded, and based on and looking at, even with something like that, if you approach as a fact checker, you come across in a different way, and you read it in a different way, and you will find things that they're not telling you, they're missing out, or they're not giving you the context to really understand. So there's some are better than others, but you can find articles that have some element of these kind of omissions in pretty much all the mainstream media. Sadly, I think there needs to be I hope that sometime people will wake up to this a bit and we'll get a change in this. Anyway, so anyway, hope this helps, and so stop there. With the mainstream media, depending on what you're looking at, a lot of what you read is accurate and good, but some things, basically, yes, a good line of thought, kind of getting skepticism is, if the title makes you indignant, if the title makes you scared, if the title makes you angry, then there's a very good chance, in near certainty, that this is not an accurate article. And then on the same topic, try looking down in the search results for an article that doesn't have an immediate emotive effect on you, of things like indignant, angry, and so on, and something that just looks as if it's written in a much more sober tone. Then that by itself is quite good for dealing with not all, but quite a lot of the worst offenders.